Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. We're recording.
Oh, hi.
We made
Hi,
it.
Nicole.
We
We
made
did.
it back here just in time for us to talk about food.
I love food.
I know, me too.
Discussed. As we've discussed before.
The name potentially of this episode is the eating confessional. And I was like, God, like, does that make it sound like it's a sin to eat?
Right?
Which it's
Um,
not, but I still kind of like the name because I feel like food and eating for every single woman I know is this like complicated, important, love, sometimes hate relationship. It's a relationship. We have a relationship with
yeah,
food.
very much so. I would
It's
agree.
it's
Every
like our
woman.
first boyfriend, our first love of our life.
It's true. It's the unrequited love. We can never quite get enough.
So today we're kind of setting the stage here for a series where we're going to talk about food, some of the psychology behind eating, some of the biology,
Mhm.
physiology behind what we put in our bodies. But we both thought it was a good idea to share our own journeys with food first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, the name of our podcast is She Runs It. And a lot of the women that are in our groups with us or that we chat with have been athletes. Um, and so there's this element of fueling. I mean, you know this, like you have strategic fueling. Um, and so there's sort of that relationship, but then there's that other like emotion, like the Oprah side of it, right? Like I eat my feelings and that kind of a thing. So it's a little, it's convoluted in some ways. So it's a conversation that permeates
Totally. And
women all
you
the
know, I
time.
I feel like well, first of all, I want to make very clear that I recognize that there are a lot of people out there, not just women. We know we're primarily speaking to women, but a lot of
Mhm,
people out there who have unhealthy relationships with food, who've struggled with disorders with eating, binge eating,
mhm,
anorexia, bulimia, the orthorexia. I mean, there are so many different ways that we can let food take over our lives, and our goal today is not to make light of any of those things, not to
mhm,
make anybody who's suffering in a much more severe way than you or I ever did to feel less than, and to let
mhm.
you know that our hope is to cover, some of those topics too down the road. So I
Yeah.
just want to put that out there right away because, a lot of times we joke about
Mhm,
some of our habits and behaviors around food, and I'm just kind of putting a disclaimer out there that we are meaning no harm to anybody
mhm.
out there who's truly suffering in a way right now. So we're going to be there for you, and our really our goal was to normalize some of these thoughts and behaviors as they
Mhm.
have, like you said, permeated our lives over the
Yeah.
years.
Well, I think, we said in the first episode of our podcast, you are not alone. And I think our intent is to tackle those things that nobody talks about. I mean, we talk about we talk about food and we share food when we're proud of it. But I certainly don't put a post out that says, "Oh yeah, I just nailed that bag of Cheetos like a chick." Like that does I don't post that. I'm like, "Oh, I'm down 2 pounds," and I mean that's um, but it's the struggle is real at any age, and it's not a conversation that you always get to have. So
It's true.
we wanted to have that conversation, so you aren't alone.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy not being alone with you tonight. Thanks, Sarah, for being open because you're gonna be. I also want to say it's anytime you talk to somebody who lives in the world of food, I feel like
Mhm.
all of us kind of like have had some food idea. I should do this like kiosk, or I think we should make these buns and sell them. Like we've all got this
Yeah.
like food thing. But anybody who lives in that world of food would say food is sort of the one thing we all have in common.
It's
We do
true.
need to take in food or calories in order to continue to live and survive on the
Right.
planet. It's how we do it and how healthy we can make that relationship with ourselves that
Yeah,
is going to potentially bring us joy instead of the opposite. So,
absolutely.
I wanted to actually start by asking you this question. How would
Yes.
you describe your relationship with food today?
That's a good question. I would say it is, should I put it in this, like, the stages of a relationship? Like, meeting someone, that kind. So I would say we're past, like, the first date. Uh,
Ah!
no, so okay. This is, I'm trying to give you a 2-word answer, and it's a funny thing that's happened. The pandemic is very difficult. I've had a lot less movement, and I've had a lot more stresses in my life with homeschooling and not being able to go to the grocery store all the time. So there are many times in my life I felt very like in control, or like I was owning my relationship with food. I wasn't overly hungry. I was good with the things I was putting in. I would say in the last year, my relationship has really taken a nosedive. Um, I have used food for coping. Um, I have used food for soothing in ways that I haven't done it in probably a really long time. So I guess we're not in a great spot. Maybe you could say I'm cheating with, and I laugh when I say Cheetos, but I have had to clear out my house of chips because I simply cannot. It's like a weird addiction. And my kids are like, "Mom, can I have Doritos?" And I was like, "No, get them out of the house. I can't help myself. I can't help myself." So that is a long, wordy answer.
So the
But
relationship's
mhm,
rocky right now.
rocky,
Yeah.
yes, it is rocky. I'm sort of seeing other people. Name Cheeto, Dorito.
I mean, I guess the real parallel would be like sleep. It's like eating I'm seeing
Yeah.
other people, I'm seeing sleep, I'm seeing exercise,
Oh,
I'm
I
seeing
wish. I
no,
haven't seen a lot of them.
no.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I really have, the majority of my life had a good relationship. Mm, e- e- I've normally been able to do well with it, give and take. But this last year, and I've actually Googled like quarantine 15 to see if it's a real thing. Um, but it just, I think a lot of people use food as soothing, um, numbing, kind of. It feels like you're feeding your soul sometimes, when you're ingesting food. And I think there's a lot of emotional ties and things like that. So, anyways, how is your relationship? Let's let's
Well, of
not talk
course,
about my
I
relationship.
had time to think about it because I knew I was gonna ask you that question. I didn't know if you'd turn it around. But I would say that my relationship with food right now is very healthy. And
Mm-hmm.
the difference is that I am not necessarily feeding myself for optimum health, but
Mm-hmm.
my emotional relationship with food is totally healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have negative thoughts tied around what I'm eating, what I'm putting in my body. Um, and I'm enjoying my food, in ways that I haven't in a long
Yeah.
time. I've actually been inspired. I've been cooking more, all kinds of creative, crazy meals, trying to make things taste great.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say that around the time I had Wilder, which is maybe going on 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of flip was switch was
Switch
flipped.
was flipped.
And I think my brain did not have as much room to obsess or think about food in the ways that I did when I was an athlete, when I was like a younger girl going through puberty, all of those body changes during those times. So my relationship with food became much less in the forefront of my mind after I had my kid, and I
Mhm.
truly believe that I just didn't have the brain space.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I might still be thinking about it more,
Mhm.
which I think is kind of interesting.
Well, it's an interesting thing, as I'm making a connection as we're talking about this, because I've entered into this like high stress place in my life, where I really have no time. There are people around. I'm an introvert by nature, but there's people around me all the time. Like I have no space to even think or plan what my food looks like. So I'm sort of being very active versus you have entered a place where you are not you're not managing the skirt sports business on a daily basis. Like you're probably in a calmer, more low key time of your life than you have been in a long time. So, that connection between time and stress, I think has a lot to do with how we handle food, as well. But and it's interesting what you said, your negative thoughts around food. Like, tell me about that. What does that look like in the past?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll go back a little bit and share because you didn't really share your history with food and eating relationship. You were
Oh,
like, I've done well with it. And then you paused and I could see these wheels turning and you like changed the subject. So we're coming back to you. But
okay.
when I was young, I was one of those stick thin, rail thin kids who ate so much food and I metabolized it really fast.
Mhm.
And, there was always a funny joke, like, when I was little, we always tell Wilder this because she's about the age when I would do this. I would get halfway through dinner and I'd be like, "Excuse me," and I'd go poop. I would literally, like, go the bathroom, and then I would
Uh-huh.
come back and I would, like, have more room and I would finish eating. I would eat, like, another plate full of food.
This is
So
when you were little?
yeah, like
When you were
10.
a kid?
Yeah, like,
Oh,
really
God.
young.
It's
It was
like,
kinda like, "There she goes. She's gonna come back and eat a whole 'nother plateful." It was like, I was just an eating machine. Um,
wow.
but and then I became a very, high performance athlete halfway through high school,
Mhm.
and right around that time, I started hitting puberty. So I was a late bloomer. So let's say,
Mhm.
junior, senior year, my body's not metabolizing things as well.
Mhm.
And I'm noticing that the athletes that performed well were skinny. So
Mhm.
I did experiment with both not eating. I would not
Mhm.
label myself anorexic or bulimic, although I experimented with both,
Yeah.
mostly because my
Really?
some of my fellow swimmers were doing, either of those methods to keep their bodies skinny. And that's at a
Really?
super high level. Oh yeah, one of my swimmer friends had scars on like her knuckles and her teeth were starting to get worn by the time we were juniors, seniors in high school. And, for me, I couldn't not eat. So, like, that just anorexia, that wasn't going to work. And then the bulimic, route where you eat a lot and then you
Yeah.
vomit
I
and
do.
let it all
Mhm.
go. I just couldn't do it very well. I wasn't good at it. So
Mhm.
I just and that's funny because, we're both high performers, so whatever we do, we wanna do well, but I wasn't good at those 2 more traditional eating disorders, but I did start to become more, obsessed with what I put in my body,
Mhm.
and it went in cycles because I sabotaged myself in many other ways through drinking and, all kinds of stuff, and with that,
That wasn't on the fueling plan?
yeah, the
The
2
the vodka
AM,
tequila wasn't?
like, standing outside the pizza place with your hands out when they closed so you could get a free slice, like
Really?
you didn't do that in college? I thought
No, I didn't
everyone
know you could do that.
I thought
I
everyone did.
just ordered the pizza. They delivered it to me.
No, we stood outside and waited till they closed, to try to get the free stuff.
That's
But,
hilarious. Wait,
so
was that at Yale?
yeah, that was it,
Just
yeah.
a second.
Just a side note.
Let's be clear. You stood outside while you were at Yale.
Yes, yes, totally wasted.
Like there was nothing about my thoughts of Ivy League college that included that. Thank you
Oh
for
my
just
god.
adding another dimension to my
Oh my god.
thinking.
Well, it's really interesting because, when you do go to college and you're already paranoid about your body and trying to eat as much as you can because it felt
Mhm.
good to eat and you liked eating, but then keep your body, as fit and thin as it needed to be to perform.
Right.
I mean, those were kind of at odds. So
Right.
I went through quite a few years of like experimenting with what worked and what didn't work. And the truth is, what worked is like literally just eating healthily, being
Mhm.
healthy, and not trying to, get by or get away with a certain
Right.
behavior. It feels like maybe you could make it work for a while, but it always would catch up to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So those were my darker years of the whole food and eating
Mhm.
disorder experimentation and trying to swim at a high level at the same time and trying to party at a high level at the same time. And, it just all
Yeah.
it's I don't think it could have been any other way for me, but,
Mhm.
it didn't stay that way forever, and I think that's the message I'm trying to get across is that there was a lot of unhealthy eating behavior, both emotionally and
Mhm.
literally,
Yeah.
but, it's the next decade or so that carved the path towards a healthy relationship with food.
Yes. And it's so interesting because I would never have thought, as an elite athlete, as a college athlete, that was even, I just assumed that you were eating good things, and I don't know, I guess I just thought that was like a requirement. I mean,
Yep. Well, were
apparently
you? Were you
no.
as a
I played rugby, for God's sakes.
Yeah, but you were
It was
still
like
like
you were
yeah, go ahead.
supposed to be drunk all the time and then
It's
eat
true.
burgers and burritos, and I mean it it's funny because I never really understood fueling, this idea of fueling. So we would play tournaments, like, and these are 80-minute all in pounding games. I wouldn't eat the whole day because I would get very, like, I worried that I would get nauseous or I'd throw up in the middle of the game. So I just didn't eat, which in and of itself also was not like, it's interesting as I hear you talk, because I've just always thought maybe I was uneducated about things. But I think there's so much misinformation out there about food. And that's one of the things I have found over time. So I have had a very convoluted journey with food throughout my whole life. I was not a skinny kid. And in fact, I'm a thicker kid, and I didn't realize that bodies were made differently. Like no one really talked. It was just like, hey, you're fat. Like, and those are the messages that were giving to me from my family, the boys at school. Like they thought nothing of calling me fat. Like in fact, it was like acceptable, to do so. And I wasn't even, it was just, I don't know. I was me, and I would look at these girls like yourself, that are tiny, tiny. And I was like, oh, well, if I just eat, less or do whatever, then I could do that. And so, um, that's actually a lot of the reasons I ended up playing. I found through sports and athletics, not only could I sort of control my mental health and I really loved it, but physically it allowed me to to stay fit and have my weight more of where I wanted it to be. And I felt better at that, but it's yo-yoed my entire life. But regarding misinformation, one thing that I was not aware of, I've always had like gastrointestinal issues, like my whole life. And I have allergies to dairy, and I was allergic to wheat. I mean, my mother tells this story all the time about how my grandfather gave me, when I was a baby, apparently I was allergic to potatoes, and my mom, my grandfather was like, "Oh, just one little potato, right?" He gives it to me, and I like, I break out in hives and I'm crying, and he feels terrible. And like, I was literally allergic to everything. I drank powdered milk and I ate rice cakes, and it was terrible, terrible. But there was this like lack of information. So actually, as I got older, and I had my second child, I understood I needed to be gluten free. And when I removed that element from my diet, all of my gastrointestinal issues cleared up immediately. Like, once I understood what was in my food, um, that changed it. And then the other thing that has happened, I was actually working with a nutritionist over the last year, just trying to kind of get everything back in check. My life has been rather chaotic for a while. And she helped me understand that different bodies are different. And that, so I've never really loved fruit. I love vegetables, but I never do well with fruit. And I sort of have this like weird spike, and then I crash, and like, but I think I'm supposed to eat, strawberries and pineapple and all of this like fruit. And what I came to understand from tracking my own body and really paying attention and being given the permission to watch what was happening was that when I eat fruit, I get these weird sugar spikes. I get sugar spikes, and I don't feel good when I eat that. And so maybe, apples I do well with, but I'll eat celery and spinach and lettuce and like um, zucchini and cucumber, the vegetable side of things all day long, and I don't have those reactions. And so I've come to understand over time how misinformed our entire society is about food, and how individual the food journey is to each person, which you've probably learned too. You fine tuned like, this works for me, this doesn't. But it's so hard to sort. There's so much information. How do you really find what works for you and what doesn't? So, anyways, that's a long way of getting to that point.
Well, and I think that's actually a really great place to get here, because what we're hopefully going to do is give people some tools, some information, some ideas for them to be able to put their own puzzles together.
Yes.
Yeah, and there is a lot of, I would say, either preconceived notions, misinformation, judgment we have for ourselves.
Mm.
And it starts with, like, I'll tell you, when I was in high school, no
Hmm.
fat became the first
Yeah.
diet trend I remember. And do you
Yeah.
remember Snackwells? They were these
Yeah.
cookies where you supposedly could just eat the whole box because there was no fat. And
Right.
we would eat the whole box,
Right.
and then you would get fat because they no fat, but they
Right.
had everything else you
Everything
couldn't
else.
understand or read, or all kinds of different things that were probably inflammatory. And
Yes.
after that, Atkins became the thing. Like,
Right.
and it just rolled from one diet trend to the
South
next
Beach
until,
diet.
yeah,
Yep.
until suddenly you realize, "Oh my god, we're in this, like, diet culture." And the word
Wait,
diet
we are? There's a diet culture in America? Just kidding. I know.
Well, and what's funny is the word diet actually means, like, what you put into your body, how you eat is a diet, but
Mhm.
people started to relate the word
Not
diet
that.
to losing weight. And so here's another one of those big, emotional triggers for women, is that a lot of people are really tied to the scale. And I will tell you that one of the reasons that I believe I have a healthy relationship with food and my own body is that I don't have a scale. I don't look at
Mhm.
a scale. I only see it or hear about it when I go to the doctor, and I have to,
Mhm.
because I have found that it plays with my head too much. I may be a
Yeah.
numbers girl, and I may count my strides and my strokes in the pool and all this
Mhm.
stuff, but At the end of the day, if I know that there's a scale waiting to greet me at some point in my day, it will affect the
Yeah.
way that I act that day and how I feel about myself. And I don't find that to be a positive thing. And so I will tell
Yeah.
you, because I know you've got some stuff to say about this too.
Mhm.
I still believe that I don't know if weight is the right word, but it's important to try to get your body to a place that's your healthy place. So
Mhm.
for me, I measure and judge that basically on how my clothes fit. And if I ever change
Yeah.
sizes, I'm in trouble because my entire garage is skirt sports and I don't want to have to change sizes. I want to stay in the same size. And
Well, I know the owner, so
well,
if you need some new sizes,
yeah, but then what are we gonna do? Like, we gotta sell all my
you
old
know,
stuff. And,
Wilder will
so
wear it soon.
I think that's the thing, if you believe and feel that you are healthy and your blood work shows you're healthy and your doctor signs off on your health, then that is a good place to sit. And there's a window around that.
Uh-huh.
It's there's a low and a high in your healthy
Yes.
range. When certain clothes are getting a little too tight, I work out harder or I think more about what I'm eating. But,
Yeah.
for me, I think that that's always been that was a really important thing to get rid of in our family. I
I
wonder how
have to
you feel about the
I have
scale.
to have I told you about this already? Is that why you're
No,
oh, I
you
haven't shared
haven't.
this? I just had the most interesting experience. So, okay, and I'm gonna, speaking of you're not alone and no one ever should, like, I'm gonna talk about my actual weight numbers. Um, because I have always, it's funny having my daughter, because I am like weirdly big boned, like very large. Like my mom and I, though we're of similar height and stature, I'm always solidly 10 to 20 pounds heavier than her because of the density of, partly it's my backside. There's a little extra back there.
The
The drunk.
density of the
Yeah.
backside.
Yeah. But you're right, there's a range, right? So I have I'll often sit at about 180 with I the good side is like 175 that's where I feel great. The high side being like 195. And I have not really had a bad relationship with the scale. I'll be honest. And it's so funny that you say this story because I have a completely different perspective. The nutritionist that I was working with, part of what she said is she's like, when you sign on to do this, you put the scale away. And I weigh myself every day, um, to sort of have like, I wouldn't get on it and it wouldn't affect like how I was going throughout the day. It would just give me a gauge of like, okay, here's where I am. I can't really tell. And so she was like, you can't weigh yourself. And so I didn't. And she was like, you just have to tell by how your clothes, like what you're saying, how your clothes fit and all of these things. And I'm only wearing like sweatpants, like not sweatpants, like leggings and stuff. I don't think I could tell. But I actually put on, now I'm at the highest I've ever been, over into the 200s, which is for me, I don't feel good there. And because I was not having that monitoring, that is actually when I ended up gaining weight, um, partly because of the chaos and the lack of control and the chips and the wine, but also because I wasn't able to like gauge myself on a daily basis. So for me, and I think this feeds back into this whole like individual journey thing, right? When I step on the scale, it doesn't, I actually, I made a commitment to myself that every day I will weigh myself so that without judgment at all. I said, Sarah, what you're going to do is you're going to get on the scale every day. So there's an awareness factor for you. How are you feeling? How is what you're eating affecting where you are on a health level? And like I said, I'm heavier than I've been ever since I was pregnant. But I tell you, I get on that scale and I don't feel bad about myself. I say, oh, okay, what we ate today, we're good, we're solid. Or, oh, hey, that was too much, or it was too, just trying to understand my own body without necessarily judging it. So it's fascinating that we have two very different sides. But again, you know who wins in the end with fucking snack wells and low fat diets and Atkins? You know who it is? It's the companies that are marketing to us. It's the companies that show us these images of women and what we're supposed to be. But we're not that. And eating snack wells and eating South Beach diets and all those things won't necessarily get us there. And I think there has to be an awareness. I tell my kids all the time when they watch YouTube, they'll be like, Mom, I want to get this. And I was like, do you guys know what that is? It's marketing. That's what I tell them all the time. It's marketing. Who do you think paid for that ad? Especially in politics. They would be like, Mom, is Biden really this? And I said, who do you think paid for that ad? And then they'd say, well, is Trump really this? And I was like, who do you think paid for that ad? So like, I'm trying to get them to understand who really benefits from this. Is it us as women? Like our job, we need to feed ourselves, but we need to feel good where we are. And that's so individual for each of us. Do you know? That's my,
Totally.
I think I was on a
I
soapbox. Let me get
No, I
off of
love
it.
it. I love the soapbox. And I think the point is we don't want to try to be an advertiser right now with
No.
this series or with our own thoughts or journeys. Because like you said, they're all very personal.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think one of the assumptions we can make is that the people listening would love to eat for their optimum health. If they can
Yes.
eat in a way that makes them feel great, then they would probably love to learn more about that. Whether they choose to do it or, have
Hmm.
hangups around it or can't quite figure it out is one thing. But that's always my sort of goal out there is when I start to hit that place where I'm not feeling great. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's mental. Sometimes it's not even physical, but I'm like, I just don't feel good. I try to swing it around and say, am I doing all the things I can do
Hmm.
to help myself feel the best I can? And one of those things is what I put in my body, starting with water, like drinking enough water.
Yes.
I fortunately don't have the alcohol included in my life anymore. I know you do,
Yes.
and many people listening do. I mean, there's definitely a wine drinking mommy culture out there that is
Hmm.
rocking and rolling during the pandemic.
Yes. But I will tell you, I've noticed I don't feel great. I've tried to cut back on that as well because it's dehydrating. I make not great choices when I'm in my second glass of wine, and then I wake up and I don't feel my best as well. So yeah, I think the hydration part is it's key. It's key to make sure that that part is happening. And I can imagine for you in Colorado, the altitude that you're at, it's like, don't you have to double your
Oh my god. Well,
intake?
it's like the worst because when you are actually skiing, like on the slopes
Hmm.
and you have on bib, leg, what am I saying? Bib, like snow pants, right?
Yeah.
And you have to pee, and then you have to, like, make sure you make it down into one of those lodges, and then you have to go in, you have to take your whole coat off and, like, your entire outfit and strip all the way down to pee, then we actually purposely sort of dehydrate ourselves because
Well, it's
I tend to have
strategic
to pee.
dehydration.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't wanna pee all the time out there. But no, I think that is a really good point. I think at the end of the day there are many different things that go into living our best lives, and we know that,
Mhm.
right? And when you have stress, cortisol stays in your body, and certain foods will,
Yeah.
gravitate to landing right where you don't want them to. And when you don't sleep enough, and when you aren't exercising the right way, so it's hard because you can't really. It's for me. I can't think about
Mhm.
it all at once. I am a person who
Yeah.
can think about 1 to 3 things, but more
I
than
love that you
that,
know that
no,
about
I'm over the
yourself.
edge. I mean, even
Yeah.
a triathlon was hard because you
Yeah,
had 3 sports, but then you had all these details in between, right?
right. That's true. Well, and we have had episodes on this before. I think there are a few things to note. One is healthy habits, right? So there's something to be said for having to think about things. So if you can't only think about 1 to 3 things, what you have to do is begin to ingrain healthy habits into your life, right? So how am I, you know, because when something becomes a habit, it's automatic. You don't think about it anymore, right? So it's a habit to drink a lot of water. Well, you just do it, you know. And then if it's a habit to eat spinach, you just do it, you know. So um I think there's that piece of it, in being beginning to automate healthy eating habits. Um, then and that's why we did 2 different episodes, right? One was persistence and one was healthy habits. Um, to me, persistence is like kind of, I don't know how you feel. I feel like as an athlete and with all the training that you've done, you probably have you've better educated yourself because you've had to, but I get super overwhelmed with the amount of information that's out there and how it applies to me. And I feel like the majority of the articles that I read about food and eating are like crap. I mean, they're not helpful. They're fluff, and they may or may not actually apply to me. And so I really struggle to filter out the information in some ways. And so to circle that back around to the persistence piece of it, I think there's this idea of there is not one like answer. There's not one answer. This is how you eat and you will be healthy. It's more like keep educating yourself and then try it with your body and see if it works or if it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, well, then maybe try something different. Like it's this ongoing journey of of eating, and then also filtering through the messages of this diet culture to say, like, do you have, you and I have both referenced it, this idea. There's a place where I've been with my eating where I feel good, I feel healthy, I feel I can actually feel that within my body. I'm sure you can as well. And that's the place that I try to get to. That's the measure of success, is not what size are you, what does the scale say, what it's, how do you feel optimal, how do you feel fueled, how do you feel good. um and to your point, the blood work and all those things, that should be our ultimate goal, not, you know, a number on the scale, not but feeling good about food. I don't know, what do you think?
I think you just did our takeaways,
Oh, I
which
forgot about
was
this.
I mean, what's coming up to for me as you're talking is this idea that we're all athletes, you know?
Mhm.
We are, no matter what level we are. We're all athletes listening to this thing. And a big part of being successful in your athletic life is to listen to your body and to know your body well. And the
Yes,
better you know your body, the more empowered you are. And
yes,
that is what I want for all of us. I want us to be empowered
yes,
and then make our choices. So there's always an opposite. There's healthy habits, and then I'm going to
yeah,
treat myself. You know, you've
yeah,
got both sides. You're going to
yeah,
treat yourself sometimes. Maybe too
yeah.
much, maybe not enough, you know, but you're going to be living somewhere in between most of the time. So
Mhm.
the other thing that comes up for me is that perfect doesn't exist. This
No.
is not a one size fits all diet culture. We
Mhm.
can't all succeed with the same eating habits. And we can't put ourselves up to like a pedestal that says you must eat this certain way or you suck right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know too many people, myself
Right.
included, who have tried to walk down a certain eating path. And if I screwed it up before 10 o'clock, it was done for the day. It all
Yeah.
went to hell. I may as well have like a beer at noon and eat a cheeseburger. And now, I'm the sober vegan of the group now. So,
Poor
this
thing.
is I'm a long way from that. And I think, part of it is that I have really come to learn my body, learn
Mm-hmm.
what feels great to me and what works for me. And then I've had the confidence to adopt it no matter what
Mm-hmm.
anybody says. And I've also had the grace for myself that when I don't eat in a way that I know is optimum for me, I immediately forgive myself and I actually think it's okay. I call myself
Mm-hmm.
a chegan for a reason. I'm a cheating vegan. I cheat a lot. I'll eat things that have eggs in it. I'll have an egg sometimes, I'll have some cheese on something. It's like, nobody is
I can't.
perfect. Perfect doesn't exist.
So no one probably realizes on this podcast when they listen that we've never actually met each other in person. Like we've
Honey?
never yeah, it's crazy because it feels as though we're sisters in some way or something like that. But someday when we meet, I want to spend a whole day with you and I want to eat like I can't even imagine. I love that your chicken is eating eggs. Like I ate 3 eggs for breakfast and 4 sausage patties. It just makes me laugh. So anyone who's listening on this podcast, you should know. Look at how different. But you like for you, that's good. And for me, I actually have found the sort of like more keto, protein heavy diet. I feel good on that, right? Like I'm satiated, that kind of thing. So mine is like super meat heavy. And you have found this like wonderful feeling and niche with vegan. Like if there could be any two opposites,
You're the meat to my veggies. That sounded really good. Oh my god.
so it's such a personal journey, Nicole. It is like, and I think that is one of our key takeaways here is eating has to be about what feels good to you, um and that's it. I mean, it I feel like the next generation of women will have a better ability. There are so many other body styles that, I mean, we literally grew up with, you know, Cindy Crawford. That was it.
And Kate Moss, she
And
came
Kate
along.
Moss.
That was
Yeah,
even scarier.
right. And that was our images of ideal beauty for women. And now, I mean, every website, America, I looked at American Eagle and I was like, oh, there's all kinds of women here, Lululemon, like all of these, everywhere you look is this more um, accepting. It does. We don't just say it like, oh, hey, yeah, whatever body type you are is fine. You can see it. And the seeing and the representation, I think, is so much more powerful than the spoken word. And so I'm hoping that this next generation of women, it's easier to listen to your body. It's easier to say, this is what feels good to me, and not, oh, I'm supposed to be this, let me restrict this, you know, just stuff myself in this tiny little this body. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Well, and do you know what one of the companies that was on the forefront of this effort of diverse body
Yes.
image?
Was it skirt sports?
Of course.
It was. Yes, I can see in my mind that picture of
Mhm.
all bodies welcome. I think it's what it
Yeah.
was.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
which I love.
Well, and I would say, can I do a takeaway?
Yeah.
I would say that one of the really great side effects of experimenting and trying to find the eating patterns that work best for you is that you will become more empowered. And
Hmm.
I want a world of empowered women. That's it.
Yes.
You will become more confident. You will become more empowered. And that's what we're looking for.
It's true. The in working with a nutritionist that I was working with, as I was like, oh, there are different bodies. I mean, I'm 43. I was like, how did I just learn that there's different body styles and different metabolisms?
Mhm.
Um, but I was like, oh, well, this is just me. I don't have to do this. I can do what feels good to me. And I did. I felt empowered. I was like, well, hell yeah. Well, then let me lean into this a little bit harder. Let me figure out what feels better um, here. So I think you're spot on. I think you're absolutely right.
I
So
love it.
we don't want to we don't want hungry ladies. We want ass kicking empowered ladies.
Yeah.
That's what
Who
we want.
feel fantastic.
Yeah, and look great in their skirt sports.
Which fit all bodies.
Yeah.
Um, so do you have another takeaway?
Um, I think my last takeaway is that if there is self-talk in your head, if there is, life would be better if I were blah, 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 take a look at who wins when you feel that way. Take a look at who's making money off of you feeling that way. And do you really, just think about it. Counteract when you feel this way about yourself, counteract that thought with, well, who benefits when I feel bad about myself? Who benefits when I beat myself up about this? And if it's not you, I don't know. What are you going to do with that information? That to me is our third takeaway. And we are probably going to need to revisit this subject a little
Yeah.
bit more. Kind of
Yeah,
a
we
big one.
will. We will.
I think so.
We will be for sure because it's too important to women. We have too much emotion tied around this thing called food. And
Mhm.
I think this was a great way to open up, step into the eating confessional and
Yeah.
spill our guts.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
I love
Well,
it.
is there any dirty laundry? No, wait, housekeeping. I keep calling it dirty laundry.
Housekeeping.
Yeah, do we
So
have some?
I did want to say we love your reviews. I actually go on and I read them all the time, and they make my day. So if you um, loved this episode, leave us a review, leave us some stars, tell us what you think. We really do pay attention to them, and it's awesome. So thank you for those of you who have left them, and we always love to hear from you. What else, Nicole? More housekeeping?
I think that's it. We nailed
Yeah,
it. Actually, no, they can get Skirt Sports for 15% off by listening to the podcast with
that's right.
Pod 15.
Pod. And to
Yeah,
get there, they go to skirtsports.com.
correct.
Skirtsports.com. And what was the discount code again?
Pod 15.
Pod 15.
And I got to tell you, I'm wearing my vintage chic Melbeck triple pocket
Mm,
tights right now. They're amazing.
they're actually working their way to being sold out.
Oh
Everyone
my
loves
God.
them.
Oh my
I know.
God. Awesome.
Woo!
Awesome. What a great launch.
Get them while they're hot.
So proud of you. Cool. All right, everybody. That's it for today. Over and out.
Bye.